Spoilers for Myth of the Machine up ahead. You've been warned. Okay, you're next.
Oh my god! Are the cup rows written so fucking well for this story?
We will just be focusing on Cuphead today, but I really do need to point this out first and foremost. When it comes to indie games, I'm ashamed but unafraid to admit that I'm pretty uncultured. So when it came to my previous video about Boris, there wasn't really much I could say about his character in relation to his game because I've personally never played it. Please don't throw tomatoes at me. No, stop it! I've watched reviews and analysis on Bendy and the Ink Machine and Bendy and the Dark Revival, but I know that those can only really get you so far. And I'm working to remedy that by watching gameplay slowly. Really slowly. Lucky for me, I don't have that issue with Cuphead. I'm a pretty big fan of the source material ever since it first came out back in 2017. Holy shit, that was almost 10 years ago. So, I actually have some decent knowledge about the characters for both the original game and show, and you can tell that the creators are a fan of the source material as well, specifically the show. It doesn't just show in the fact that there are references, but also in the way that Cuphead and Mugman are characterized. It is really hard to talk about one without talking about the other, given that they're so tied together. However, I will do my best to push Mugman to the side, perhaps for a later video, and focus on this fucking ding-dong. Out of the two, Cuphead is the first to really get introduced to us. He makes his personality very well known in the prologue and beginning of chapter 1, being very sure of himself, cool, but also incredibly intimidating. Him and his brother have been tasked with getting the map for what purpose? We're still unsure. We just know that they were told to retrieve it, but end up forgetting the job in favor of helping Bendy and Boris. More on this later. Where we really get to see him shine is through his first interaction with Boris. Hello, you. This whole scene is etched into my mind, and it's just perfect for analysis on both Boris and Cuphead's part, as we learn a lot about both of them from this fight. But since I already talked about Boris in my last video, it's your turn, Cups! Their fight technically begins back at the Ink and Paint, where Boris decks him with a mug of beer. Cuphead sort of keeps taking L after L in the prologue, but in his own words, that just means he has a score to settle, and boy, does he settle it! He immediately shows he is a force to be reckoned with, speeding forward with the smoke bomb ability and slicing Boris's back with his magic faster than he can react. We can already learn a lot about Cuphead just from this battle alone. How he treats it, his attitude towards it. The entire time, it feels as though he's playing with Boris, showing just how much he's out of his league. He even comes up with a set of rules, a game completely in Boris's favor, and a game that only puts one life on the line. His own. If you've read Quest for the Ink Machine, I'm sure you remember after a certain event, Cuphead spirals and shows off some pretty poorly represented suicidal tendencies, and I love how this offhanded writing decision for Quest wasn't sidelined, but repurposed for Cuphead's character in a way that makes sense the more you get to know about it. They decided to rewrite it instead of just completely forgetting about it. Once again, more on this later, and back to the battle. Cuphead easily bests Boris, dodging shot after shot and not attacking him once. The only time he does attack him is to keep him where he is, not aiming to kill him, but also not allowing him to run away from this. It isn't until the final shot that Boris has left in his arsenal that Cuphead slows down and gives him the second best target he can possibly give an enemy, his own chest, which Boris immediately refuses. In later chapters, we learn that foes that have been able to land fatal blows on Cups typically get angry at the fact that he's incapable of death. So for Boris to not only hesitate, but straight up refuse to kill this dangerous enemy shocks him to the point that he's genuinely startled when Boris offers his only weapon against Cuphead back to him. Cups made this a fair fight like how he thought Boris wanted, played by the rules he's lived his life by, and for Boris to throw it back in his face, spouting something about morals leaves him conflicted. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if he was the first person to show Cuphead mercy. After all, with what him and his brother must have faced in their lives, that concept has to feel so foreign to him. There's nothing to gain for Boris by sparing Cups. In fact, he puts himself at more risk by doing so, but yeah, he still does it. Earlier, he was projecting onto Boris. After all, he's had to fight for his brother before, make some choices he probably regrets. He probably thought that he had a pretty good read on him because of this, that he knew exactly what Boris would do, but lo and behold, he was wrong. Again, it shocks him, but it also makes him stop. Sure, Cuphead had no intentions of killing Boris, but to be spared in kind was probably the last thing he was expecting. Pacifists are a rare breed in Myth of the Machine, so it's understandable why it's so surprising to Cups, but I imagine it may be interesting to Cuphead. After all, when him and Mugman leave Boris, he hits him with a see you around rather than a goodbye. And sure, that could mean nothing, but it could also mean he wouldn't mind playing with him again, especially since he looks almost excited to have to go see the B-Bros again, although that is just speculation on my part. All in all, Cuphead is an amazing foil to Boris and vice versa, where Cups is loud and outgoing, Boris is quiet and reserved. While Boris hardly ever smiles, you are hard-pressed to find Cuphead not smiling even in intense situations. Cuphead has lived through the harshest realities of the world and acclimated to it, while Boris is stubbornly sticking to his morals, no matter how dangerous that may be. But there is one thing that these two have in common. They cherish their brothers above all else. Now I know how it may possibly look in the comic. Muggsy always getting onto Cuphead about something, the two constantly bickering. But if you have a sibling, then you know that this is pretty typical in that kind of dynamic. And you don't have to look very hard to see how much Cups cares about Muggs. Everything from him calming him down whenever he's stressed, fussing over him about being low on soul liquid, and of course Mugman being the only reason he doesn't accept death or getting dragged into hell and goes back to the mortal plane. But I don't know, that could just be me. Okay, seriously though. Watching this update live was just a treat and absolutely solidifies Cuphead's stance on his own life. That suicidal ideation rearing its head in again, showing us that our cocky red-nosed Cup is ready for death, whether that means walking through those pearly gates or being dragged down to the fiery pits. Notice here how when Cuphead lets go of his chain, his mind immediately goes to Coupe Legrand. Not his first soul contract, but something far more significant, his first kill. With this memory being the first thing he thinks of, I imagine that this is him reminding himself that he deserves this. After all, killing leaves a permanent mark on your soul, doesn't it? However, the memory continues, and we see through Cups' perspective a young Mug standing there right by his side. This clearly takes place shortly after the "Do you still love me" flashback, finishing it up with a nice little bow. You know, if you don't have scopophobia. He stares at the grave of the man he killed, and then the brother that he'd kill for. After remembering this, he rushes back to the mortal plane, and I can't help but feel like this just shows how much Cuphead genuinely cares for his brother, but also kinda, sorta depends on him. Bringing up Quest again, Cuphead's suicidal tendencies are directly linked to Mugman's cop-out death, and from then on out, he toxically stakes his life on his brother, actively making Mugman feel as though it's his responsibility to stay alive so Cuphead won't try to off himself again. Now, of course, this is not the same situation, although it still grabs him a similar mentality and twists it in a way that actually makes me believe that Cuphead cares about his brother, but still gives him that internal self-destructive mentality. As mentioned before in this video and in the Boris video, I am so happy that Norton Fly didn't just throw away these character flaws, because at the end of the day, character flaws are not what was wrong with Quest. It was the way that it was written. Those flaws are what make a character interesting, and it gives them something to work towards to become better or even worse. Will Cuphead develop away from this mentality, his character slowly learning that he can live without Mugman and can live for himself? Or will he take it to lengths further than we can even imagine? Once again, it's this panel of Boris handing Cuphead his gun back that makes me believe perhaps this quest will do him some good. And a lot of bad. Probably a lot of bad, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Anyways, what we get next is a lot of Bendy and Cuphead interactions, and of course we get to learn a lot here too. We get confirmation on the fact that Cuphead and Mugman never intended to kill the B-Bros, despite Bendy's insistence. Cuphead can apparently share his ability with Bendy, which is a surprise to him, and some backstory on Cuphead and how he never learned how to read. Which, by the way, we are once again showed another point of care and self-deprecation on Cuphead's end, considering he got the short end of the stick, making a sacrifice by letting Muggs go to school and saying that he was told he was too dumb to catch on, which, by the way, he never disagrees with. Cuphead and Bendy's dynamic works pretty differently, as the two clearly don't favor one another, but are similar enough personality-wise to be able to easily quip off of each other without it feeling awkward. Though, one thing that I've noticed in this dynamic is the fact that Cuphead seems to use Bendy to his advantage consistently, making Bendy think that they are working together before ultimately betraying him. And we see this best of all back in the prologue when stealing the map, and, of course, with their deal. This deal made between the two was honestly the reason I decided Cuphead would be next, as you can probably tell from the beginning of this video. The speech he gives Mugman about this plan, how he's been formulating one since the beginning, really got me hyped for what's to come. And proof that Cuphead is smarter than we all think is set in the beginning. He uses Bendy's desperation against him to get the map away from Felix, who, mind you, is a very well-known adventurer and star. And he does this to be able to steal it away from an easier target, that being Bendy, of course. Sure, things don't go according to plan entirely, but it also still sort of works. And I can't help but feel that this was in fact foreshadowing for their deal and possible future betrayal because Bendy's desperation was commented on in both situations. Plus, unlike his deal with the devil, Cuphead did not blindly shake on it. This panel shows him thinking on it, knowing that there will be consequences to his actions, but also knowing that this is his only way out and only way to get to the ink machine since Bendy is the only one who could read the map. We don't know exactly why they need it, but I digress. He's knocking two birds out with one stone. After all, protecting Bendy isn't the only condition of their deal. He specifically mentions the fact that Bendy has to get him and his brother to the ink machine. There is a cuff on either side of the chain because Bendy must also hold up his end of the deal. After all, would Bendy or Boris have agreed to letting them join their team if it weren't for the fact that Bendy was desperate to get out of the searcher situation? Well, unlike Quest, I'm pretty sure that they're smarter than that, which is why Cuphead needs to be more cunning. Once again, unlike Quest.
Oh, and I almost forgot to mention the second interaction he has with Boris that I love and adore. He cannot grasp the concept of someone being sad over his death, which is both hilarious but also incredibly sad. He tries to cheer him up in a similar way that he does Mugman, but obviously Boris doesn't take to it well. I imagine Boris's character really eludes Cuphead, as this wolf has managed to surprise him not just once, but 3 times at this point. I can't wait to see more interactions between the two, and between Cuphead and literally anyone. Overall, Cuphead is a very interesting character to analyze, and I feel as though that isn't all that I could say about him, though a lot of what I do want to say are based off of smaller interactions that I have a feeling will play a bigger part later, but it's too small to bring up now. For now, I'll end off with this. If you like creepy yet cartoony characters with more charisma than even they realize, then Cuphead may be the character for you. He's fun, but not just some comedy relief. He's got some wild trauma, but he ain't edgy. He feels like the perfect explanation for this comic. Silly, unsettling, and jam-packed with lore. Thank you all so much for watching and for your patience in waiting for this video. Mugman is next on the chopping block, but he will come out whenever he's ready. Like, his video will come out whenever it's ready. And for those of you who wanted Bendy to be next, I am so sorry, but I am contractually obligated to wait and finish that one whenever chapter 2 is finished, so that one's gonna be a while. Until then, I hope that you all stick around and make sure to go support Nort and Fly on their respective Tumblrs, TikToks, and of course on the Myth of the Machine Patreon.
I'm on there now. It's actually some pretty good stuff. You really don't want to miss it.
And thank you to Kix for choking us Cuphead. That's all for me today, but until next time, good morning, evening, afternoon, or whatever time it is for you, and I will see you when I see you. Bye!